What's good, family? Podcast. What's good, and thank you for tuning in today. Today on the show, we're going to talk about church, especially given one of the articles that I stumbled across in a video that I saw today. I felt like this is something we should really talk about. So without further ado, let's get this conversation started out right. The source of my article that I found was from BuzzFeed. And it's about a pastor who told the ushers to lock the doors to the church and raised 40K. Now, the pastor in question is one of my favorite gospel artists, Marvin Sapp. I did see the video. I read his comments about his actions, and I feel a certain type of way. And the reason being is because I come from, as y'all have probably heard on multiple episodes, I'm a Christian man myself. And I was raised in the church, brought up in the church, God-fearing. Mom and dad both kept me grounded in the word. Matter of fact, my grandma was an usher. My grandpas were both deacons. My mom sang in the choir, and my dad was the pianist for his church. Grounded in every aspect of the church. And then I myself have been called to the ministry. I've preached 2 sermons, and I guess it kind of hits me differently. And the reason being is because, again, we as Christians were meant to lead by example. Our life is the light that brings others to Christ. So when we get roped up in situations like this, where it's being shown that we're in it for the money, it's all about the money, and it gets people to feel like, man, I'm just paying tithes to this man's lifestyle, to his whatever his needs or anything else like that. So it tends to give, not we, but it tends to give the feeling that, again, church is just about money. So let's take a look at that. Let's actually look at it. We're gonna talk a lot about the Bible in this episode. I can't quote you scriptures by memory. Some things I can, but some things I can't. So for anybody who watches this, please don't take offense to it. I always say do your own research. That'll help you out. But let's start out with the duties of the congregation to the pastor. Pretty much from what I understand, the congregation is supposed to look after their pastor. The pastor is the shepherd of that flock. He is the person responsible for his congregation's souls. So in return, the congregation makes sure that the pastor has the things he needs. So like if your pastor goes out of town, most of the time, a lot of the congregation will go with them. If your pastor has to go speak at another church representing the church, it's looked at for the congregation to provide financial funds for that pastor to go do what he needs to do. A lot of times, if the pastor's invited by another church, that church will then front the bill, and vice versa. That's kind of how I grew up learning how the church works. Of course, the church has business meetings where every member who is a part of that church can attend the business meeting and see where the finances are going to, lights, building funds. You can go. I'm pretty sure your church has a building fund that you can go take a look at and be a part of and find out where the money's going to. So you look at the church, that's pretty much how it functions, more or less. I mean, I probably left some things out, probably some things need to be added, but from my understanding, that's how the church works. A pastor's lifestyle is not necessarily funded by the congregation, but the congregation does play a big part in that, because you got to think about it. Some pastors, that's their full-time job. I mean, you got a pastor who you feel you need to be able to call 24/7. I mean, that doesn't leave that pastor room to really work a nine to five job. So he has to make money somehow. I mean, that's just how the world works. You need money to live. And if being a pastor is his job, then that it is the congregation's responsibility to therefore support that pastor. I mean, that's kind of the give and take of pastor being the leader of a churches. Now, you have pastors who will go out and do other things to help generate income to where they're not so much of a burden on the church. But I mean, each pastor is different. No pastor is the same. There's no, I mean, the Bible is the ultimate guideline on how to be a pastor, but there is no set rules for it. If you look back into the Bible, I believe around the book of Exodus, as the children were coming out of Egypt, Aaron was appointed the first, we could say, pastor, leader of the flock. There was God, there was Moses, and then under Moses was Aaron. And Aaron was the only one who could go behind the veil and also eat of the food or the offerings that was given. I believe that's correct. Last time I checked, that is correct. So if you look at that in now's time, I mean, the offering went to the pastor as well as to God's. I mean, we can't get upset at that. So why has it become so, I don't want to say politically charged, but so negative for the congregation to give to the pastor? Well, you got to look at the person who's in charge of you. There's good pastors, there's bad pastors. I hate to say it, that's just the way it is. Not everybody who's called to preach is meant to be a pastor. Just because a person can deliver a dynamic message that reverberates through your body and your soul doesn't mean that they're meant to be a pastor. Just because a person can hold a tune and preach doesn't mean that they're meant to be a pastor. A pastor is one who tries to model himself after the examples of God. But in doing so, it doesn't mean your pastor is superhuman. No, they're human just like we are. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to fall short. So why has it become so taboo, money in church? Because you have pastors who they'll just take and they don't ever give. They're unreachable. They're unobtainable. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to associate with you. They don't want to partake in your life or achievements. They want to take credit for everything and don't want to give nothing back. I've ran into some pastors like that myself that didn't take a stock interest in me and what I was going through. And I understand that they have a congregation to look after, but in certain aspects, when you're being reared up, especially to preach, it was like, okay. So you have no advice, you have nothing to say, no words of wisdom, no encouragement, no anything. Okay, all right, I see how it is. Now I thank God for one of the pastors who I grew up with, a great man, strong deliverer of the word of God. He took me up under his wing and nurtured me. But because I wasn't a member of his church, there was only so much he could nurture. The stuff he did teach me, it stuck with me and has stuck with me to this day. One of the books that I've read from him that he gave to me was Are You Called to Preach? How do you know if you're called to preach? And it's a great read. In teaching me what I called to preach and was this the calling that God had for me, I learned that I have to try to model my life after Christ. Now, I've fallen short of that. Even now, I'm still falling short of that. I make mistakes and everything else like that. I say that to say this, that there is no guidelines or no perfect man of God. But by me being called to preach, does that mean I'm meant to be a leader of a congregation? I don't think so. That's just my personal thought. So we look at the situation of right now where Marvin Sapp ordered the ushers to close the door to the church and demanded that the congregation, 1,000 people, he said there was 1,000 people in the congregation and there were 1,000 people online. And if each person gave $20, 40K. And so he justified his actions by stating, which is true, well, at least in the Baptist church, ushers did close the doors to the church around offering time. Nobody was allowed to into the congregation or into the sanctuary. It was for the time of people to get up, go place their offerings in a basket, or the ushers would bring the collection plates to you and you give your money. That was so the ushers could do their job without interference of having to worry about people walking up and down the aisles. So what he said, the example that he gave is, to my knowledge, a true example. But the issue I take with is not the example he gave, but the tone of which he delivered what he said. To say that I want to see people get up, I want to see you come up here and place that money in the offering or collection plate or whatever they had up there, and calling it a seed, sowing a seed is wrong, because sowing a seed is optional. I have to give my tithes. The God requires 1/10 of what I make. We say make, but per the Bible, your offerings was the first of your harvest, the first of your flock, your firstborn. You offer that to God. Given that we don't live in a time where most of us don't deal with livestock, most of us don't deal with harvest and crops and all that, we offer 1/10 of our income, the first of our income. Now, people divide that up however. Some people divide it up annually, monthly, weekly. It varies from person to person. But the idea is for you to give 1/10. Now, do you have to give 1/10? No, you don't. You give what's on your heart to give. Now, a seed is something outside the offering. It's something else entirely. Sowing a seed should never be mandatory, at least from what I believe. Let me not quote this as this is how every church operates. I don't believe a seed is sown automatically. A seed is something which is led on my heart to give extra. Now, I don't have to give extra. And a lot of these churches has got this idea, sow a seed and get a blessing. So now you're turning blessings into transactional things, but that's not what a blessing is. A blessing is not transactional, and it can't be transactional. A blessing is something that you receive from God, whether you sow a seed or not. You're talking about sowing a seed. Some seeds you may not even reap the harvest of that seed within your lifetime. It may be something that your descendants walk on. But to stand up in front of a congregation with the mega platform that he has and demand what he demanded, I'm sorry, it's wrong. And I'm still a fan of his work. I'm still a fan of him personally. What he did doesn't change how I feel about him, but it does paint him in a new light, and it does gives a negative outlook on us as Christians, because again, we're getting wrapped up so much in the monetization and not looking at what we should be looking at, which is the spiritual aspect of it. When I saw that video, I felt I'm telling y'all, I felt a certain type of way. It stung me to the core, because I've left a church that was every Sunday, hey, sow a seed, sow a seed, sow a seed. God's going to bless you, sow a seed. There's somebody out there who got $100, sow a seed of $100. And it's like, it shouldn't be like that. That's not how church should work. That's not how giving should work. It's, I give out of my heart. You can't need a seed every every Sunday I come to church. You shouldn't need a seed. I mean, that just, then it's not a seed anymore. It's an extra offering. It's an extra giving. What Marvin Sapp requested of that congregation was, for me, it was wrong. And the idea that he could take to social media and try to blame the social media and people not understanding. Well, of course people don't understand, because a lot of people may not have gone to church. So within that time frame, you should have explained, hey, I'm part of the Pentecostal Association and I'm the chairman, and we got a goal set to hit 40,000. That's the budget. We want to hit that. And we're looking for everybody in the congregation to give $20. And then everybody online who's watching to give $20 so we can meet this budget or meet this goal. I mean, the wording should have been different. And I'm pretty sure people in the congregation would have had no problem giving, but to demand it in the tone that you demanded it in, and to say it the way you said it, and then backdoor and try to clean it up as this is normal behavior, this is normal things that churches do. It's not that. That's not how, well, at least not in the churches I grew up in. That's not how we operate. That's not how we go. So you put the churches giving your platform in a negative outlook to where we have to now do damage control, where churches have to defend the practice of collecting tithes and offerings and explain, hey, we're not about money, but we do need money to function, to do our outreach program, to touch the lives of other people. That message is lost on people. I know, given my history, my church, especially my church at my church home that I'm still a part of, has done a lot for me and my family, and has helped me and my family on many occasions, not just financially, but spiritually and physically. So I don't mind doing extra for my church home because they've done something for me. But a lot of people may not have that type of relationship with the church. The particular church in question may not want that relationship with their congregation. I know churches right now where even if you're a member, you still got to pay to use the church to bury your loved ones who are members. You got to pay for the program. You got to pay for them to open up the building. You got to pay for them to cut on the lights. Like, you still have to pay, but yet you're a member and you give to them every Sunday religiously. That's not how church should operate. I don't believe that's how God operates. Now, if you're going to run the church as a business, let your congregation know, hey, this is a business. We're not doing nothing for free. We don't do charity. This is business. So then people know, okay, this church is a business. This how it works. But the average church is not a business. It's a place of healing. It's a place of help. It's a resource center. It's a place where I can go to and I can speak to somebody about my problems and connect with them on a very personal and intimate level. Giving of money is very intimate. Marvin Sapp did say that is an intimate moment. It is intimate because I'm sowing into this congregation, this building, this church, this however you look at it. So that's a very personal thing for some people, because I mean, let's think about it. You're not going to just go give your money to any organization or any entity. So for you to say, hey, I see where you're going. I see the vision. I see where you're trying to get to, and I want to help get you there. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna give to that. But to just say, hey, there's 1,000 of y'all out there, and there's 1,000 of y'all online, give the money. It reminds me of Don't Be a Menace while drinking your juice from South Central in the Hood, and the scene where the pastors are like, don't ask no questions, just give the money. So I said all that. That was a funny movie. But we as Christians are now in damage control, and we're coming up in a lot of politically charged crosshairs right now. I mean, especially with the stuff Texas is doing with pushing the 10 Commandments in school. You got people re-energized about church is just about money, given this Marvin Sapp video that resurfaced, and just this politically charged era where religion and state is crossing lines. It raises the question, what are we to do as Christians? How do we operate? How are we supposed to operate in this politically charged time where we don't really have a set example of how to be? You got the mega churches, who a lot of people feel are all about money, and you got little churches that are dying out that are asking for money. And because they're asking for money, you're like, man, I came to this church to get away from all this. I need money. And here I come to this church that has a small congregation, and they're talking about the same thing, but yet they're talking about it because that church may actually really need it. So I tell anybody, you got to do your research and you got to stay prayed up. You got to read your Bible and study the word and ask God for discernment on what you should and shouldn't do, what's tolerable and what's not tolerable. Look at the examples that have been set. If you did attend church in your younger years, that was set forth then. You can't just formulate an opinion off of what the new headline is. I personally think that the church body itself it's time for us to reinvent ourselves, especially in this day and age. And yeah, our job is to go out and make disciples of the world. But how do we go about making those disciples? Again, you're not going to make a disciple by making somebody feel you have to pay your way to get into heaven. You're not going to make a disciple by not communicating with your congregation or clearly articulating the goal that the congregation is trying to meet, or your entity or whatever it is that you're a part of is trying to get to. You're not going to make disciples of that. People need to understand the mission of the church or the mission of your group of pastors or whatever it is. Fun fact, most people going to church don't even know their church's mission statement. So the church has to get back to teaching that. We have to get back to the basics and teaching the basics. And then I think we'll start to see change. Again, this is all from my 35 years of living. This is all from, again, the way I view it and my interpretation of the Bible and how I feel the church should operate. I don't believe there should be any dealings done in the dark. It should be all out in the open. Now, does that mean that every church is gonna fall into that line? Nah, it doesn't. But it's a start. And if you want to see your church grow, if you want to see it prosperous, you can't be stuck in, hey, we can't tell them this. Be honest with it. Hey, if the lights are about to get cut off in the church, tell them, hey, look, man, we got to raise some money because we about to get the lights cut off. If the water's about to get cut off in the church, hey, look, the water's about to, be very honest with what you need, and God will open up the door for that church to be blessed. Again, I say this and I'm going to let y'all go. I feel Marvin Sapp should have handled that situation very, very different. Again, it was a clip. I don't know what was said before. I don't know what was said after. From what the article I read on BuzzFeed, it touched base a little bit how he had to spend $2,000 in renewing his licensings and some other things. And then the article jumps into him asking for the $40,000 for the association or whatever he was over. But that should have been communicated to the congregation. Hey, look, this is who we are. This is what I'm the chairman of, president of, whatever. This is the budget. This is the goal. We were trying to meet this goal and go from there. But to just say, hey, ushers, close them doors. I want to see y'all get up and give money. Everybody give $20. That's the wrong way to go about it. So that's my take on the current state of affairs as far as the church goes. And I will talk to y'all again later. Thank y'all for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And we'll catch y'all the next time.